We're on Shulchan Aruch on page 1. That's a funny thing to say. Page 1. Backward all again. I'll read to you Maran so you understand where we're holding him. Maran tells us on page 1, Achar she'etzeh mibeit hakneset. Once a person leaves the synagogue, Yilech leBeit HaMidrash. He should go to the Beit HaMidrash. We mentioned last week that the Beit HaMidrash and the Beit Knesset are two different places. One is where you pray, and one is where you study Torah.
Should go, or if he should go.
He should go. Vikba et lilmod, and he should establish a set time to study Torah. So after a person prays Shacharit, they should walk over to the Beit HaMidrash and they should study Torah. You know, in some yeshivot or places like that, they have a concept. They have a Beit Knesset where everyone prays, and like a big library where everyone goes to study. So that might be the equivalent of a Beit Knesset versus a Beit Midrash. V'tzarich she'oto et yeh kavua. It's very important that time should be a set time. It should be a set time. What does it mean a set time? Shelo ya'avirenu, you should never skip it. Afim hu savur la'arviach rabeh. Even if he expects that he'll make a lot of money if he skips it, he still shouldn't. This should be his time. It's set time. Fellas, you guys all move down. Marlene can come sit by the table. Yeah? Come. Why don't you sit down there, Marlene? We'll sit over there.
Chair over there. It's okay to open the chair.
I think there's a chair here. Okay. Oh, I got it. Okay. Raphael, so you move that way. Yeah.
No.
Yes, not that much, a little bit dry.
That's good.
So the Ramah steps in, and the Ramah shares the following.
They don't dry.
The Ramah says, Achar, V'af mi she'eno yodea. V'af, and even. Mi she'eno yodea lilmod. Somebody who, eino yodea. You remember this word, eino yodea?
Doesn't matter where.
Yeah, where does this come from? This word, no, it doesn't come from, but where else do we have it?
Or they are.
Oh, okay, but I didn't know Haggadah Achad Yodea. Where else is that word? There are 4 sons in the Haggadah.
Oh, yeah.
The one who doesn't know how to ask.
The one who doesn't know how to ask. This is the one who doesn't know how to learn. Yelech, he should go to the Beit HaMidrash. You should just go to the Beit HaMidrash, even if he doesn't know how to learn. Uschal halicha biyado. And he gets reward just for walking. It's called schal halicha, reward for walking. A person gets this reward when they walk to the Beit Knesset. And I once mentioned to you, there's a halakha in Shulchan Aruch, don't tell this to anybody who lives too close to us. The halakha is that it's better to pray at a Beit Knesset that's farther away from your house than one that is closer. Because every step that you take is a mitzvah.
Now I feel better about the shul moving over here.
I'm very strict about this.
Look how forced into it.
This Chai Halicha is very important. So much so you find in the Talmud, there's a famous story you may remember about Rabbi Meir Balanes. Rabbi Meir Balanes had a lady that came to him and he had to spit in her eye. Do you remember the story? Mm-hmm. Yeah. There was a famous lady, it was a big tzaddiket, and she would go every Friday night to go hear the drasha of Rabbi Meir Balanes in his synagogue. The times of Mishnah. I struggle very much that women don't go to the Knesset on Friday night. I never understand it. And most of the ladies tell me, well, it's because they're tired or they're getting ready for the meal that they are preparing. Nobody pays you to come to your Shabbat table on Friday night. Nobody deserves that you should be their waitress for Shabbat night. If you want to go to the Beit Knesset, that's something that you feel like doing, and the only reason you're not going is because you have to add another salad to the table. Nobody's paying you enough money that you should give up on your Friday night experience. I'll tell you the truth, is Friday night tefillah, let's put Kabbalah aside for a moment. Just the experience of being in a Beit Knesset on Friday night is a whole nother experience. Most of the people who come and speak in the Beit Knesset and make noise in the Beit Knesset, and they don't come on Friday night. They only come Shabbat morning. So if you actually want to pray, come on Friday night, because those people are not here. It doesn't mean that people who come on Shabbat, they are talkers. It means that normally in any Beit Knesset that I've been in, Friday night is the night where people come to pray. Saturday morning is when everyone comes to socialize. And that's another issue that we have to fix. But Friday night, at least I'm talking. I don't understand why people don't come. And I know I have this problem in my own house, so I don't preach this so strongly. But it's something that if somebody wanted to, it's an extra bracha to come on Friday night. It's a special thing. And so this lady used to go to Rabbi Meir Baal HaNes' synagogue to listen to his drasha. And she walked to his synagogue because he was so far away from her house. She wanted those extra mitzvot for taking those steps towards Rabbi Meir Baal HaNes' synagogue. Her husband, this happens very often. Very often you'll find one spouse is very religiously inclined, and one spouse is very much not. And what this does is it causes a lot of tension at home. And there are ways to talk about this tension and deal with this tension, but it's a hard place to be in, where one spouse wants to fly, and the other spouse just wants to stay where they are. And you can't fly without your spouse, meaning it would be irresponsible to fly and leave your spouse in the dust. So there's a lot of compromise on both ends that goes in and makes for a very tense experience. Her husband was an Amharitz, an absolute ignoramus. Like, she was going Friday night to hear Rabbi Meir Baal HaNes' speech, and she understood his Torah, and he was the kind of guy who was just, the Gemara doesn't have nice words for him. And he just got sick and tired of her leaving every Friday night to go hear Rabbi Meir Baal HaNes. And so he decided that she must be cheating on him. And so he threw her out of the house when she came home on Friday night. And he said, I won't let you come into my house, you disgusting person. I'm going to Rabbi Meir Baal HaNes' classes. You know where I am. It's the same thing I do every Friday night. He said, yeah, Rabbi Meir, unless Rabbi Meir Baal HaNes spits in your face, I won't let you come to my house. And she's sitting outside her door. She doesn't know what to do. She's a devastating place. Her next door neighbor sees her outside crying, comes over and says, what's going on? She says, my husband threw me out of the house and he won't let me back in until Rabbi Meir Baal HaNes spits in my face. She says, no, soon he's going to be walking to his house. He'll walk by our doors. Why don't you ask him to spit in your face? I can't go to the rabbi. The rabbi, spit in my face because I have a crazy husband. So what did she do? She speaks to her friend. They're talking, and she's too embarrassed. Rabbi Meir Baal HaNes comes down the street with his students, and this lady starts screaming, I have a terrible eye injury. Who knows how to whisper that Kabbalistic incantation in my eye where you spit in the eye and then you whisper words of Kabbalah? Who can heal me like this? Rabbi Baal HaNes heard it, and I said in his HaShamayim Kodesh he understood what was going on. And he went over and he said, I know how to do it, don't worry. He said, open your eyes, and spits in her eye. And he whispers to her ear, says, now go home and tell that husband of yours that Rabbi Meir Baal HaNes spit in your face. When the students heard that it was because of her husband that their rabbi had to degrade himself in such a way, they were ready to break down the door and beat that man up. Rabbi Baal HaNes stopped them and said, listen, if Hashem is willing for his name to be erased, to bring peace between a husband and wife, how much more so my name, Meir's name, could be erased in order to bring peace between a husband and wife? And he continued walking. You find in that story that the reason she walked so far was in order to fulfill this, get this schar of schar halicha, to walk. So he says, even if a person doesn't know how to learn, says the Rama, at least he gets schar halicha just for making that effort to go to the Beit HaMikdash. Oh, or he should establish for himself a set place. If he can't go to the Beit HaMikdash because everyone else there is studying something specific, he doesn't know how to study that, he should choose a place and study a little bit of the Torah that he does know. V'yachshov b'inyaнаv, and he should ponder in his thoughts that topic. V'yachnis, and it will enter b'libo, into his heart, Yirat Shamayim. It will place into his heart Yirat Shamayim. Person doesn't know how to study Torah, there's some kind of Torah he studies, there's some topic he once heard about, there's some, he should sit and make for himself a time to know what it is that he does know. In the olden days it was very hard to study Torah. There was no, person was illiterate, a person didn't have the proper education, the Torah was a locked book for them, it was sealed. Today it's almost the contrary. It's hard, like, when you couldn't log online, you couldn't hear a podcast, you couldn't get a YouTube video, you couldn't walk into that class and find a class of people who were studying. You couldn't, and the answer is no, most people couldn't. And that makes a Jew in a very difficult position where he wants to maybe study Torah. He has the will to study Torah, the desire, but he doesn't have the tools to do so.
Do you think most Beit Knesset basically had no library? Like just had like a Torah maybe?
Most Beit Knesset were like that. They had Sidurim, Torah, and that was it. And then there was another room or another. In fact, most places it was just
Beit
another
midrash,
building.
something.
It was a Beit Midrash. That's where people went to study. They didn't pray there. I don't know if it was lack of funding that made Jews combine these buildings, or if it was because in exile we didn't have that luxury to have two different buildings. It was just that everyone had a religious center, and then you did everything in that center. I don't know what it was that caused the Beit Midrash to separate from the Beit Knesset, but in most places that's the reality today. In most places. And you have to imagine that in some places still, if you go to one of those very fancy synagogues in New York or even in Israel where it's like all those wooden pews and they have the stained glass windows, and it's not very conducive to studying with people. Like, you don't give a class in there because unless you're going to fill up the whole auditorium, they normally have another room that they go study in. They'll call it the Beit Midrash, or they'll call it the library, or whatever it would be. And that is essentially what we're talking about, the Beit Knesset and the Beit Midrash. That's the divide here. So let's look down at the notes below. Siman Kuf Nun Hey. Kviat itim. Kviat, establishing itim, times, the Torah, for studying Torah.
Here we are.
Under the two lines on page 1.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you were in the notes.
No. Kviat, establishing itim, times, la Torah, for Torah study. Ve'achilat, and eating, pat, what is pat?
Bread.
Bread of shacharit, of the morning. Meaning, the mitzvah of establishing time to study and time to eat breakfast. So this first halakha is all about studying Torah. The next halakha in this chapter is all about breakfast. So, kviat itim la Torah, it's repetition, establishing times for the Torah. Aleph. Achar shesiyem tfilat shacharit. Once a person finishes their shacharit prayer, v'yatza mi bet HaKnesset, and now he's left the Beit HaKnesset. Yilech leBeit HaMidrash, he should go to the Beit HaMidrash, lilmod Torah, in order to study Torah. V'amru Chazal, and our rabbis tell us, in Masechet Brachot, hayotze mi Bet HaKnesset, someone who leaves the Beit Knesset, v'nichnas leBeit HaMidrash, and enters into the Beit HaMidrash, ve'osek b'Torah, and he involves himself in the Torah, Zoche, he will merit to mekabel pnei Shechina, to receive the Shechina, the divine countenance. Shneimar, like it says in Tehillim, Yelchu Michael el Chayil, or if you're Ashkenazi, Michael el Choyel. One's a patach, one's a kamatz. You go from Chayil el Chayil, from strength to strength, meaning one strength is the Knesset, right? Very good. And one strength is the learning of Torah, the Beit Midrash. Yireh Elohim b'Tzion, and it'll be Hashem from Tzion will appear to him. V'amu od Chazal, and our rabbis also said in Masechet Sanhedrin, Shetchilat dino shel Adam, that the first questions they ask a person in his day of judgment, literally means Shetchilat, the beginning of dino, of the judgment shel Adam, of a person, al divrei Torah, is about the study of Torah. Ve'amrod, and they say furthermore, Bisha'ah, at the time, Shemachnisin, that they bring in Adam, a human being, Ladin, for judgment. So the time after 120 years when they bring in a person for judgment, Omrim lo, they tell him, they ask him, really, Nas'ata v'natata be'emunah, did you give and take honestly? Did you do business honestly? Kavata itim la Torah, did you establish set times for Torah study? These are the first two questions the president asked after 120 years. We're going to learn a little more, and then I'm going to come back and do this footnote because it's time to get a little bit in the nitty-gritty details of this halakha. On top of page 2. Oh, by the way, the Chavetz Chaim was once.
One is to me business honestly, but other one.
Is did you establish times to study Torah? Did you have set time to study Torah?
Monday, Tuesdays, and Thursdays.
And Shabbat, don't forget. And Fridays and that night, don't.
Plus, any studying we do at home also at night time?
Yeah, it should be a set study.
Is that why you were telling us it's good to keep your tefillin on after Shachrit and kind of do like a little bit, like say one more, like a
Correct. It's good to learn something after.
Something.
Very good. After you have it, it's to keep your tefillin on and learn with those tefillin on.
Because then you're actually doing a set time for study.
Yeah, even if it's small, it's still a set
Still
time.
set.
It's something that you set. Now, it doesn't really get you off the hook for learning Torah, but it at least begins your day with Torah study. That's
Wasn't the
true.
section after Ein Kelokenu considered to be?
Yeah, but learning is. Yeah, so the whole Tefillah is full of Mishnayot and things like that. There's a book called Chok L'Yisrael. Today they have it in Hebrew and English. It's not just in Hebrew like it used to be. Chok L'Yisrael was established by the Arizal. And the Chok, today they have it for free even online, meaning you could buy the set, which is could be expensive, I don't know. But they have Hebrew-English versions of it. I think you can sign them up and get them by email or just log in on the internet. It's called echok.com. It used to exist back in the day. I don't remember if you have to check if it's still around today. The Arizal, and all the Sephardic countries, this was what was done without a doubt after Tefillah. And in many, many Ashkenazi countries, once the Hasidic movement came about, they took on this study of Torah as well. The Chok L'Yisrael is made up of a few parts. The Arizal set, it's 5 books. Every one corresponds to a book of the parasha, of the Chumash. So you have Bereshit, and it'll say the Sunday of Bereshit, the Monday Bereshit, Tuesday Bereshit, Wednesday Bereshit, Thursday, Friday Bereshit, and then Shabbat there's nothing because Shabbat you're supposed to go to the rabbi's class and learn Torah. So Sunday it'll tell you, and
I
it's
think
split
they
up.
might have Friday. They might have an extra on Friday.
Friday is something much longer, and I'll explain.
Yeah.
So Sunday, the Arizal gives you a little bit of Torah, which is the Chumash of that week, a little bit of the parasha, with Rashi, or another commentary. And then a little bit of Navi, which is going to be from the Haftarah, and Rashi. A little bit of the Ketuvim, of the writings, and Rashi. Then it has a set Mishnah, that you do a little bit of Mishnah, with the commentary of Ravenu, Ovadia, and Bartanura. And a little bit of the Talmud, a little piece, with a commentary of Rashi. And then there's a little bit of Zohar. And today they have the Zohar translated to Hebrew, already translated to English, and to learn a little bit of Zohar. The Chida, Rabbi Chaim Yosef Levi Azulai, he added, his name was Rabbi Chaim David Yosef Azulai, so he added what's called Yosef Lachok, an addition to the Chok. And he added 2 more sections, one which is a little bit of halakha for the day, either from the Rambam or the Shulchan Aruch or another book. And he added a little bit of musar for the day. So in the different ethical works, a little bit about character traits, a little bit about something, anger, about lashon hara, but something. And if you could study this, you can do this every year and finish the cycle every year. So a little bit on Sunday morning, a little bit on Monday morning, Tuesday morning, and you finish entire Mishnayot and pieces of Talmud and books on halakha. And there used to be a world, especially in the Sephardic world, in which nobody left the synagogue until everybody finished learning Chok together. This was part of the rule. Maybe you finished Tefillah, and for an hour and a half after Tefillah, you sat down and studied Chok L'Yisrael. So at the very least, your average store owner knew his parasha with Rashi, he knew his haftarah with... You don't come to Shabbat like not knowing what's happening in the Chumash. You know a little bit of Mishnayot, taught by the rabbi, you know a little bit of the Gemara, taught by the rabbi. Everything, and if you already are better, you could do Zohar already and those things. Some people, they had to rush, so they would take the book with them to work, and they would do the first part of the synagogue with everybody else, and they would run and finish up the Talmud at work, or finish up the Zohar over their break. And that way people were studying Torah all day long. Or if you didn't have a chance to study all day long, at least you started your day studying a little bit of every area of the Torah that exists. It's a very special thing, and somehow this dropped out of popularity. And I have a few theories.
One of the things is time.
One of the things is time, but I'm not sure that it's really time. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if we were... I'm talking to myself also, because I also got kids to take to school and a wife to drop off at work, and I know I don't judge anybody else in the morning. But imagine if we had a world in which We start working at 10. Why? We anyways work till 6 and 7 and 8 and 9, so why not start? So what? I anyways have to work like that. Anyways, they take my whole life, so then I can't at least take my morning?
Well, yeah, I think on the internet they spelled C-H-O-K.
C-H-O-K.
Yeah,
Okay.
Chok.
Okay. But they have someone,
Israel.
I
You
think it
just
was
search Chok, Israel.
someone in the Syrian community, perhaps, someone like that. They sponsored a whole translation of the book. And they've printed it, but they have it for free online, and anyone can just go and learn it and read it. It's something that I suggest if you have time. So let's say you don't want to do all of it, so at least choose. Say this year I'm going to do the Torah part, next year I'll do the Nevi'im part, and next year the Ketuvim part. You'll be amazed at how much you can learn. Fridays the custom was
What is the
that people
website?
didn't really work much on Fridays.
What is the website called?
I
Just-
think it's Chok. Just put in Chok Israel in Google, and
just Google
you'll come up.
Chok Israel.
C-H-O-K?
C-H-O-K space Israel, then you'll find it.
The Chavetz Chaim
Why
and
is this
Shalom
Hajj
was
Shalom?
known to be very sympathetic towards the Hasidic movement. So much so that people actually accused him of being a closet Chassid. So once at one of these big rabbinic conventions, there was a famous Hasidic Rebbe that approached the Chavetz Chaim and said, hey, if you love Hasidim so much, then why don't you just become a Chassid? Why do you have to play this game that you're not Hasidic? And the Chavetz Chaim pulled out this piece of Gemara and says, our rabbis list the questions that they're going to ask me after 120 years. They'll have to give judgment about. And one of those questions is not, were you a Chassid or a Mitnaged? That wasn't one of the questions they're going to ask me. So long as it's not one of the questions, I have better things to focus on in my life than which side of the fence I stand on in this discussion. On page 2, V'lachen, and therefore, Yikba Zman, a person should establish time, set aside time, La'asok b'Torah, to involve themselves in Torah, b'chol yom, every day. The word La'asok, it's the same word we use in
Chok Israel.
the morning blessings.
Oh.
La'asok b'divrei Torah. It doesn't say to read words of Torah. It doesn't say to... What does it say?
Immerse, involve means
Involve means it's a real experience, a real involvement. It doesn't mean listen, it doesn't, to really learn
Is it
Torah.
like the same root as Esek, business?
Yeah, very good. Because a person is fully involved in their
Make it your
business.
business,
Yeah,
basically.
make Torah something that's really important for you. B'chol yom, every single day. I'm sure there's a minhag in many Sephardic communities. Let's say Shabbat, the night before a brit, random occasions that come beforehand. The people get together and they read entire books of Zohar. And I always found this custom. Listen, it's not a bad custom to sit. You can get people together to read Torah. That's fine. But I sometimes wonder, would it not be much better for them not? Who understands what the Zohar is saying? At the very least, read it in Hebrew or read it in English or read a part of it, just a paragraph, and try to understand it. Unless you don't know, so bring a rabbi who knows a little bit of Zohar, could take the pieces, select them, and read them. But at the very least, to read them in a language you understand. It's kind of like, I think Netanel Schwartz was asking me about like reading Tehillim if you don't understand what you're saying. That was him? Yeah, what is the? I know the Kabbalists will tell me all kinds of value to mumbling, all kinds of things. But what is the real value? I have half an hour, I have 20 minutes to do something that will help me connect to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So I'm going to choose to do it in a language I don't understand, in a way that I don't connect to, because there's some kind of spiritual connection I'll get that I don't actually feel. Like on Shavuot. On Shavuot, there's a whole tikkun, there's a whole book that the person's supposed to read according to the Kabbalists on the night of Shavuot.
The Akdamot.
The Akdamot are in the daytime. The tikkun, the Arizal set a whole to finish all the books of the Chumash, the first and last verse of the
Right.
chapter, all kinds of things like that, Zohar and Mishnayot. And we don't do that here. The reason we don't do that is not out of some rebellion to the Arizal. I believe if we were learning Torah the whole night every year and we study it, so now is our time just to do whatever the Mekubalim say, just to read through the beginnings and ends of every parasha and the last, those Mishnayot that spell out a certain word. But we have one opportunity to stay up the whole night and study Torah. I'd rather do something that is going to engage the community or the people that are coming to study Torah in a way that they'll remember until next year Shavuot. And there's nothing wrong with making this calculation. The Mishnah Berurah says even about prayer. If you know you can only pray a certain amount, you only have an attention span for a certain amount, you only have time to pray a certain amount, go to Talmid Chacham and ask him to tell you which parts you should pray. It's better to pray less with more kavanah than praying everything without any kavanah. Our rabbis taught us this rule a long time ago. The mumblers of the Torah, it doesn't get us anywhere. It doesn't. I'm not talking about tefillah. The mumbling, I have to finish my enter the blank here. My 3 chapters of this, my 10 chapters of that. Why? Why do you have to finish?
When you're reading Tehillim, though, it's not a intellectual, cognitive thing necessarily. It can be also this sounds too mystical perhaps, but I see the words as like streams of connection.
But imagine if you could also understand them.
Well, I understand,
Oh,
but
so
the
I'm
words
not
are going
talking
so
about you.
fast, though. It's like reading a newspaper very fast. I mean, you're not going to get the news out of that. Like, you have to concentrate at a different pace. You know what I'm saying?
In the old world of North Africa, on Shabbat morning, instead of saying Ekelahenu, every community would read 1 chapter of Pirkei Avot of that week. Just for the 6 weeks between Pesach and Shavuot. And it wasn't done mindlessly. It was a chant that everybody chanted together. Moshe kibel Torah miSinai umsara liYehoshua Yoshua laZkenim. And it was done together as a community. And everybody thought about these words, and probably later the rabbi would get up and give a dosha on one of these mishnayot. But I've been to some communities where they'll tell you, okay, so now let's read silently pages 120 to 127, and then we'll continue with Kaddish. And what did anybody get out of that? What did anybody learn from that? It would be much better those 7 minutes the rabbi gave them to stand up and say about Torah, to teach a halakha, to teach a pasuk from the Chumash, to teach one of the mishnayot that everyone's reading.
I was once part of a synagogue where there's one person had like very fast davening. He could daven very quickly. So then these other people started just saying like, "Oh, we want the express." They used that person's name and said, "Oh, let's do the
express
XYZ
davening.
express." And then it just kind of spread. Other people were like, "Oh, let's have the express." And if anybody else got to daven, then it would be like, "Oh, why don't we do let's get the express instead?" And then it just and then that person was encouraged to just compress it even more to the point where it was just boop, boop, done.
Famous Litvish Rosh Yeshiva. I forget who I'm talking. I read his biography once, and in there he had a story that he used to always be the chazan of the yeshiva, but there was a time where he was sick and he couldn't do it. So they asked one of the bachurim to pray instead. And the older bachurim, they knew the pace of tefillah and this. But there was a new yeshiva guy, and someone wanted to honor him, so they brought him up to lead the services. It's a mistake. If somebody's new to a community, they should never agree to lead services. They should never, even if somebody wants it. They should learn first the style of the community and then agree to lead services. And so this boy gets up there, and after the tefillah, everyone's going, "Yeah, shkach." The Rosh Yeshiva comes over to him and says, "Come. I want to show you a verse in the Chumash." Here's the verse in the Chumash, and it says that the Egyptians chased the Jewish people out of the land of Israel, and then b'chipazon, we left with in a hurry. We didn't have time to bake bread in a great haste. He said, that's very impressive, the story, and we're supposed to remember that we left Egypt every day of our life, but there were no Egyptians chasing you during Mincha, you know that? Don't pray like the Egyptians are chasing you. This was his, pray like you're...
So isn't that inappropriate to do it just after you daven? You shouldn't do it at another time.
So I think...
But if he's Rosh Yeshiva, you can't.
All right, I think Jack is right. Like, if that was just me walking over to some guy and telling him, yeah, when you're in a yeshiva and the Rosh Yeshiva is your rabbi, so you can let him, his part of his job is to educate the students. In the way that a parent might tell a person, and this might sound very foreign to somebody who's not part of his yeshiva, but he might come into the room and say, you should have stood up for me. Not because he's asking you to stand up. His job is to teach you halachot. So one of the halachot he's telling you is, you should stand up. And if a person's from outside of the yeshiva and he would tell him that sounds like you're chasing after some honor or some ego. But somebody who's inside the yeshiva, it's almost like we appoint the yeshiva, or in some yeshivot they have a mashgiach, ruchani, that's their job. That their job is to just be on top of people and to tell them things that we need to know. And so that, I don't think it was meant in an embarrassing way, but in a way of, that's not the way that you should pray. I remember when I was in yeshiva and guys when I was in high school also, these guys that chuckled very much. I was probably part of that group, and when we came to Israel, Rav parents would go over to people who would chuckle the tefillah too violently, and he would just hold them. And he would say, calm down. I said, but it was in the middle of Shemona Esrei, right? What do you say? Did you wait afterwards? What do you mean, you can't chuckle during tefillah? He said, imagine if I was talking to you like this. How are you doing today? And
I've seen people do it.
You would
Teaching
think
like that.
There
are rabbis
crazy.
Like that. There are quite a few people who do that.
So if parents says if the whole purpose of standing in tefillah is to stand in front of a king and to speak in front of a king, you would never stand in front of the president speaking like that. He said, a king, how much more so? He said, but it's about this. He said, listen, if you want to something keeps you on your business, it's fine. But your whole body is it's shaking in the wind. It's a crazy thing. He doesn't let. And so somebody might get offended, but that's why he's there. That's how we learned how to pray. When we had that opportunity for somebody to come over to us and just say, "Hey, that's not the."
Because we bow at the very beginning of him, you bow twice, right? Then you bow again.
That's another question. There was somebody who asked the question: how do you differentiate this from all the bowing that you do? I mean, what's the difference?
Well, I mean, there are.
How do you know you're really bowing?
Mamash, you're bowing all the
Shakers,
time.
literally. I mean, there's a shaker movement. Are you familiar with that? Are you familiar with that?
I'm not familiar with that.
It is a gift to be simple.
Yeah, it's just a gift to be simple, where you're shaking all the time because you're getting in the spirit of connecting.
Very good. So there's a Hasidic shot like that in which it says, "Kal atzmotai tomarna Adonai michamocha." All my bones will call out Hashem, who is like you. So the Hasidim used to talk a lot about all your bones moving during tefillah. In fact, there's a famous story about a Hasidic Rebbe who allowed a woman to get divorced without a get because her husband didn't shuckle during tefillah, and he said to you, he's not really Jewish because he doesn't have a flame of Jewishness inside of him if he doesn't shuckle. Now, if that story is true or not, I don't care. But I've heard that story so many times to know that that's part of Jewish belief today that shuckling is important. And like what you mentioned, see, again, if we were doing Jewish yoga or Jewish meditation, and part of this was like saying a mantra over and over and shaking things and getting in the spirit of things, then that would be true. But tefillah is actually a conversation. Tefillah is not a connection. Tefillah is about really having a normal conversation with Hashem, which is why it's okay to pray in English. Not just okay, it's probably preferred to pray in English than it is to pray in Hebrew. Unless you understand Hebrew. If you understand Hebrew, it's a different story.
Well, I've always heard that the way you could tell a non-Jew in a synagogue was that he was the one who didn't chuckle.
Right, well, that's not. Well, I guess in my yeshiva there can be a lot of non-Jews. That's
what I always heard everywhere I went. And the other thing was that if you
Don't let it
daven
be
really
you.
fast, the Yetzer Hara can't get in.
Oh, yeah, I heard that one.
Yeah.
Oh wow,
What's that about?
That's
Yeah.
a new one. I haven't heard that.
It's 'cause you're over it at a
Rabbi
time.
Nachman in the Sichot Haran, he mentioned something
Yes.
similar. I don't know. Rabbi Nachman mentions, the rabbis say that when a bad thought hits you in the middle of tefillah, you should stop and wait for it to go away. Rabbi Nachman said, well, if you wait, you could be dwelling on this thought for 2 hours. Instead, just zoom ahead, and you'll probably get distracted with the tefillah. This was his. So what about the fact that part of your tefillah you were still thinking about bad thoughts? He said that's what it means. Rabot machashavot belevish. There are many thoughts in the heart of man. V'atzat Hashem hitakum, and what Hashem wants, He'll take out. Hashem knows how to take out what He needs. That was Rabbi Nachman's teaching. But between that and saying just full steam ahead so the Yetzer Hara can't get in, I don't know. I'll tell you, the more and more I study Judaism today, I feel like the Judaism of today has many problems. And I don't think it's anybody's philosophy, because in Chabad, 100 years ago, tefillah took like 3.5 hours on a normal weekday morning. The sixth Lubavitch Rebbe, who was not 100 years ago, much more recently, Tuesday morning Shacharit, Rabbi Shlomo Kalbach said he used to pray with him for 3.5 hours, Tuesday morning Shacharit. That was a normal week, no Torah reading, it was a normal weekday Shacharit.
Short Tachnun.
We are not that level.
I went to a shul in Brooklyn once where mincha took an hour and a half.
Really?
Yeah.
Where? In Brooklyn?
Maybe it's a guy from
V'yeh zman zeh kavua tamid. V'yeh, this time should be kavua, established. Tamid, always. It should never budge. It should always stay in that place. Be'ofen, in such a way, shafidu im rotzeh, that even if he wanted lalechet to go le'asakav, to his business, v'savur, and he thinks shi'arviach, that he may profit harbe mamon, a lot of money. Lo yivatel, he should not annul or uproot kviuto, his established time b'limud Torah, for studying Torah. Uvevadai, and surely, she'ish kazeh, that a man like this,
Establishing time for study Torah.
Yes.
Just to make an appointment. Just an appointment.
it's like having an appointment.
Right.
Hamamin, who believes, uboteach, and trusts, behashem itbarach, in Hashem, Shelo yafsid mamon, that he will not lose money. Machamat kviyuto, because of his established learning. B'limud Torah, in the study of Torah. Hum anshei emunah, he will become one of those men of emunah. Uscharo, his reward, kaful, will be doubled. Me'et Hashem, from Hashem.
Sort of just like following Shemitah for the.
It's a similar idea. The source of this, though, not being as
What's
biblical as that. Emunah. If a person has this kind of faith, he can be considered among the men of Emunah, the people of Emunah.
On Shay, like
Yeah.
the men that can. Similar.
Shea Knesset.
Yeah. It's like, I'm trying to figure out how that Anshe got it. So basically, it's when they stand a collection of people who are believers.
We have this in the long Tachanun on Monday and Thursday. Anshe Emunah. We say in that Slichot. Anshe Emunah Avadu Bayim B'Kolach Masa. That first part, Anshe Emunah Avadu, the people of faith have been lost. Now, what happens if you can't? You really can't. There's something you have to get to, whatever it is. You need to go. Im hu anus, ve'im hu anus. If a person is, what is anus?
Right. Rushes?
Anus is honest. It's a accident, but that's not exactly the right translation. Honest could mean accident. Honest, for example, in Hebrew, means rape. The Torah, when it uses the word rape, it talks about honest. The idea is forced. If a person is forced against their will, they don't have a choice. Probably the best word is if a person does not have a choice. Machamat shu tzarich la'asot, because he must do something nachutz biyoter, something very pressing. Beoto, at the same zeman, time, shebo kovea itim laTorah, that he normally establishes Torah study. So if there's something that comes up at that exact time that he normally studies Torah, and he doesn't have a choice, ve'eno yachol, and he's unable, lidchoto, to push it off, lidchot, to push off, lachar miken, until afterwards. So what should he do if he has no choice? He can't say, I'll be there if you... What he does is yilmad pasuk echad. You should study one pasuk. Or halacha echad.
One halacha.
Or one halacha. V'achar kach, and afterwards, yelech, he should go la'asok b'inyanav, to become involved in his daily matters. V'yashlim, and he should fill, make it up. V'yashlim is literally to complete zman limudo, his time that he should have learned, lachar miken, at a later time. So he normally studies an hour in the morning. At very least, he should read the first sentence of what he was going to study, and then run out and take that book with him, so that at lunchtime he could learn his hour instead. One of the Lubavitch Rebbes once gave good advice that if you do this, you should never allow yourself, there should not be rollover hours. You can't roll over Monday to Tuesday. You have to finish it, what you need to learn on Monday, so you finish it on Monday. You don't say, because then what's going to happen, you have Shabbat, and all of a sudden you have 7 hours, you have to finish. So you didn't learn every day, you learned on Shabbat, and who has 7 hours on Shabbat to study? So it said it shouldn't ever pass the midnight mark, or whatever 24-hour period you give yourself. You should always make sure that it stays within the same day. You can push it off, but in the same day. There's an interesting halakha. We don't have this problem here. But imagine if there was a door over here, and we had a unit that went all the way to the other side. It's not sure what it was. And on that side there was another door. And so you parked your car here because you were doing some shul stuff, and then you went to the bathroom, and now you want to make it to the tailor on the other side. So said, why should I go down the stairs, come back around? I'll just come to the shul. You're not allowed to use the Beit Knesset as a shortcut. It's a halakha. The Beit Knesset is a place of worship. You can't just walk through it and use it as a shortcut. So what do?
Find a reason to be there.
Downstairs, upstairs.
Very good. So you could walk around, or you could do something like this. You could come inside, preferably take a seat, but if you can't, so stand, come down, something like that, and say a paragraph of Tehillim. Most of you know better.
Express.
And then,
Express.
or a short Mishnah. רבי חניה בקשה אומר, רצה כפול זכות לפיכך חבל תורות ושלמה, והשם חבל זמן צדקו, יגדיר תורה ויאדיר, and then walks to the other side. You never know. Some shuls you say that, they might start saying Kaddish or something. So you have to walk through. But this is it's the kind of thing where give respect to the place and you're able to. So is it a bare minimum? Of course. Does it really count as having sat down and taken a sefer and learning? No, not necessarily. But at least it makes you aware that I should be learning now. I should have stayed after tefillah to study, but I didn't get a chance. I had to run somewhere. That is very important.
Yeah, be sure to teach it to your children's children, because it's door to the door.
Oh.
Yeah.
Jack isn't even
Yeah,
scooped
I
up the
know,
table. You
no,
see
I
that
know.
is-
Here,
I
let's
mean,
switch
I can't do
seats.
better than that. No, that's definitely. No, the door's wide open.
Let's go through back at Kollel, guys.
Yeah.
Let's go back to page 1. I want to do this footnote with you. I'm very proud. I see a lot of people writing. It's a big deal.
We have more pencils coming tomorrow.
Oh, more pencils coming tomorrow. You have to tell me I
We're doing the
sponsored
trial.
one.
Around
Oh, we used to have the
Eli are
the
like
basket.
trying a few
Yeah,
out,
we used to have the cup of.
You're like a
These are thinner. I think it'll work.
I don't
better.
have
Yeah,
that.
I have point 3 coming tomorrow. We can, like, move it.
This is the pen?
So let me remind you what I said here. The rabbis in Masechet Sanhedrin, in that second paragraph on page 1, I mean under 2 lines, the second paragraph, the rabbis in Masechet Sanhedrin said that the first thing they judge a person about is
Honesty in business.
no,
Zev-
that's not what it says.
Give and take.
No. The first part of the first paragraph.
Establishing the time.
They judge the first thing they judge about is about our Torah study.
Oh.
And the second source from Masechet Shabbat says
Oh,
they ask you
honesty
two
in
things:
business.
did you do business honestly, and did you study Torah?
Mm.
So what's the obvious question here?
Which is right.
Right, which is the true version? I mean, either it's the first thing they ask you, or it's the second thing they ask you. You have to make up your mind. You can't tell us it's the first and it's the second.
Did you
Maybe they switch the order once in a while.
Did you honestly set time aside?
Oh, okay, interesting. I think, by the way, a simple answer here might just very well be when it says the first things they judge a person about. It doesn't have to be the first thing exactly, but the beginning. I mean, the first. There's a long list, and on the top of them is going to be the study of Torah. But let's see what Tosafot
But
says.
there's a whole thing of, human nature is such that if you set up a particular time to do something, you're more likely to stick to it, whether it's, Limud Torah, Lahavdil, exercise, this, that.
Correct.
You just say, oh, I'll do it on Monday and this and that, or next week I'll do it on Wednesday and the following week you don't do it, because you always find an excuse not to. But when you're committed to a time to doing so, like what you mentioned in Shabbat about the guys who learned together and wouldn't even go to his daughter's wedding or something because they had the...
Right, I mean, that was
so
the
strict
extreme,
about
but
it,
that's the idea. You're right.
But the idea is like nothing is going to stop me from getting to that class. 'Cause
Correct.
Otherwise you could say, I'm too tired, I'm this, or I'm not feeling so good, or something came up, I have a business call. And then before you know it, you're not learning Torah. That's what happens when you're from experience, I know that.
Yeah. And me too. I feel like, not to judge people who don't, but I kind of feel like, there's people that are saying like, oh, I can't make it to Kollel, it's too much for me, it won't work. And it'd be very easy to say that. It'd be very easy.
I think everyone has the
Yeah.
ability to make that excuse. For
Yeah.
all of us, it's hard. But it's interesting. You'll notice that in the weeks that we have Kollel all the time, we kind of get into that third. Kollel becomes less difficult to come to. It's kind of like we got into the hardest time to get back into Kollel is right after
After a
Pesach or
holiday,
right after Sukkot or right after some kind of break because
You
it
lose
just it
momentum.
became out of our. It's not just momentum. It went off our schedule,
Yes.
and so it wasn't part of our routine anymore. Once it goes back in our routine, then it's kind of like the person who goes to pray in the Beit Knesset every morning. So that routine, it becomes much easier. It's harder for the person who comes only once a week. Like, we tell people, come once a week. Choose one of the weeks and show up to Minyan. That person has a harder time getting there than the person who comes every day. It's different. It's a different. Once thing and routine is okay. It's not a bad routine. There's a good routine. In fact, the holiest night of the year is the night of the Seder. And Seder, the order, is very, very important. It brings us a lot to a place of one Menuchat HaNefesh, of you're a little bit calmer because you're not running anywhere. You know exactly when you're going to take. You have that hour in your day that you take care of this, an hour in a day that you take care of that. And so your life is a little more organized, and you worry a little less. And the second is, it really just helps you accomplish the things you want to accomplish. So the Tosafot asks the following question on Siman Kuf Nun, the bottom right column. You see that? I remind you again that in the bottom notes, if it's a normal Hebrew script, it's an elaboration on the text above. If it's like on page 2 where there's Rashi script, that's just him giving sources for the things that he said above. So it's different.
And where in the back part of it, where they're actually giving the Shulchan Aruch.
The Rashi script there is the Ramah.
That's the Ramah.
Yeah.
That's what I thought. Okay.
Ayin b'Tosafot. I'm going to be audacious and should suggest another thing. If you want, you don't have to listen. If you want, this I don't care about anymore. But this is something that helped me out a lot when I was in yeshiva. To write down every time you see a rabbi's name or the name of a book, to write it down on a little paper or the back of your book in a notebook, and take it with you home and Google them, find a Wikipedia page about them, and kind of arrange them based on timelines. These were rabbis before the Shulchan Aruch. These are rabbis after the Shulchan. Rabbi Meir Balanes is not the name of the Kabbalist Baba Sali. They're different generations. This one was time for Mishnah, and this was that lived in the 1980s. And it will help you make a lot of order out of these discussions. Make a lot more sense when you realize which generation they lived and who they were. Why the Ashkenazi rabbis had a Sephardic one. The reason I say something, a Sephardic rabbi, an Ashkenazi rabbi, is so you understand that it doesn't come from nowhere. It's part of a bigger picture. It's part of, there's a reason, there's a philosophy to this. And it's very important to know. This is a Rishon. Why a Rishon? His world is still where medieval Jews are. He didn't hear about the Hasidic movement yet. This is something that happened later. It's important. It makes a lot of order in your mind. Ayin b'Tosafot. So I'll give you an example. Tosafot is a book. It's a commentary on the Gemara. That's very pilpulistic. Right. And not one person wrote the Tosafot. The Tosafot was written by a collection of rabbis called the Baalei HaTosafot, the masters of the Tosafot.
Yeah, when?
Medieval France.
Medieval
In Germany.
1200?
Rashi's, these are mostly the generation of Rashi's grandchildren. So the exact year I can't tell you, but that generation.
Well, so Tosafot, I thought they're all Rashi's grandchildren, but there are other people
Yeah,
too.
correct.
It's just a generation.
Yeah. I mean, there are some of them that are actually Rashi's grandchildren. And there are Rashi's grandchildren who wrote books that are not Tosafot. Ayin b'Tosafot, look in the Tosafot, shehikshu, and that's why he refers them in plural, not in singular. That they are asked, al ma she'amru, what that which they said, shetchilat dino shel adam al divrei Torah, that the beginning of a person's judgment is about divrei Torah. They ask on this concept. Where do they ask from? Mima she'amru, from that which we said, shetchila shalin oto, that first they ask him, nasata v'natata be'emunah, did you do business honestly? V'achar kach sholim oto, and they ask him, kavat haitim laTorah, did you establish time to study Torah? So the question is, which order is it? Which comes first, Torah study or business? V'katvu liyashev, and they wrote an answer, b'terutzam harishon, in their first answer. Sometimes what the Tosafot will do, they'll give a few answers. The first one, the second one, they'll argue on the first one, they'll get rid of the second one. Right? So in their first answer in the Tosafot, they write, the Adam, that a person, she'osek b'Torah, who studies Torah, ela shelo kava itim, but he'd never established set time to study Torah. So a person who studies Torah but doesn't have set time to study Torah, shoalin oto, they ask him tchila first al masau matan, about his business.
They ask about the business first.
Right. V'adam shelo asak b'Torah klal. What about the person who didn't learn Torah at all? Tchilat dino al divrei Torah. The first thing they ask him about is about the Torah. So it really depends who you are, what they ask you first. That's the first answer of Tosafot. The second answer of Tosafot is very different. The second answer, Uveterutzam hasheni, a terutz is an answer. A kushia is a question. A terutz is an answer. In more Yiddish Hebrew, there's a kasha and a teretz. Every kasha, every question has a teretz, an answer, but that's not the pronunciation. Kushia is a question, a terutz is an answer. Uveterutzam hasheni, in their second answer, kadvu atosavot, the Tosafot write, Tilinyan she'ela, regarding the questions they ask us when we go up after 120, shoalim oto, they first ask him tchila al masau matan, about his business dealings.
They're asking business whether did the
Now, whenever
business-
any person who comes up, the first question they ask is, did you do business honestly? Was your money kosher? Were you fair?
That's the first question.
Yeah.
was honest.
It's the second.
Avalinyan hadin, but regarding the order in which they judge us. Judging is different than interrogation, breath. Yen nidon tchila al divrei Torah. He's first judged on the words of Torah. In this way, it doesn't contradict. See, the first answer says there's two different kinds of people the Gemara is talking about. The second answer says no, everything is in order. The questioning, they ask first about business and then about Torah. But when it comes to judgment, they first judge about Torah and then about the business.
So why doesn't the priority of time follow the importance of each? I mean,
Explain.
why don't you ask first what's most important?
So you're essentially asking why. Why is it this order? The answer is I don't know. We'd have to look up the Agarata over there and do all the commentaries on the Agarata. What are the purpose of these questions? What are they trying to get at? What is the purpose of asking if not judging? What is really judgment? And all these are very good questions.
It'd be an interesting discussion because
Yeah.
on one hand, how could you study Torah if you're not honest in business? Because you don't have a munah, and that you're not a man or woman of truth. On the other hand, what's the most important thing is limud Torah before business. But business is action, and study has to be expressed in action. So by the time you leave this world, your action should be concomitant with your study.
With your study, correct. But you know that it's not always that way.
Right, of course. It should be, I guess.
Umaran Bet Yosef, and Maran, Rabbi Yosef Karo. Khan, over here, Katav Levaer, he writes an explanation, Bedat Atur, in the opinion of the Tur. So the phrasing here of the Hebrew sentence is wrong. Not wrong, it's just not the way we'd phrase it in English. The Tur has an opinion, which he didn't mention yet, he's going to mention now. Who's the Tur? The son of the Rosh. Maran is going to write an explanation of the Tur's phrase that he didn't mention yet. So he explains the following. Shekatav, the Tur writes, Shetchila shoalim oto, they first ask him, Kavat haitim laTorah, did you establish time to study Torah? V'achar kach shoalim oto, and then they ask him, Nasata v'natata be'emunah, did you do business honestly? So the Tur just switches the order around. And he says, first they ask the person about Torah, and then they ask him about the business. And what is that why? That which they say, Sheshoalim oto tchila, they first ask him, Nasata v'natata be'emunah, did you do business honestly? Lo nachit ela mem arad, kama dvarim shoalim oto. This list is only there to tell you how many things they ask him. Velo dak besidra. And they were not dak, they were not midagdek, they were not particular about the sidra, about the order. So this Gemara has nothing to do with the order. This Gemara is in the context of which questions they ask a person when he dies. Not in which order do they ask a person these questions. These are just the questions they ask.
And where do they get the source for what questions they would ask in Shemayim?
In the Gemara. This is some wisdom that our rabbis had from Moshe Rabbeinu. And then he writes, Maran writes, Tosfot tirtzu binyan acher. The Tosfot answered in a different way. V'tirutz ze nachon hu. And their explanation is the correct one.
So Ron said it doesn't matter what the order is, it's just what the questions are.
Oh, but here's the problem. The problem is that Maran is not very clear. So whose answer is the right one? Is he saying the Tur's answer is the right one? Or is he saying Tosfot answer is the right one? How do you find out? you have to see where else Maran mentions this idea about judgment. So let's do this. Let's look where else Maran talks about it, and then try to come to a conclusion. V'ayen barambam. Look at the Rambam. ובשולחן ערוך יורה דעה, and the Shulchan Aruch יורה דעה, שכתבו, that they write, stama, just plainly, שתחילת דינו של אדם, that the beginning of the judgment of a person, על דברי Torah, is on the words of Torah. ואפשר לומר, and you therefore could say, דסביר להו כמו שכתב בבית יוסף בדעת הטור. That when Maran says this answer is correct, he's referring to the Tur, because he's writing Torah first. Or it could be the Zvira lahu, that he holds keterutza batra shel Tosafot hanal, that he holds like the second opinion of the Tosafot, in which he writes the beginning of judgment is about Torah, and that which our rabbi said that they first asked about business is just it's out of order. That's all. So Maran is vague. And you can't really bring a proof from that which he wrote, because you could read any of the two answers in his words. And so we don't actually know what Maran said. וכן כתב לבאר הפרי מגדים. The Pri Megadim, he explains the same way. ועיין במעשה רוקח, look in the book מעשה רוקח, ובנימוקי מהראין, and the book נימוקי מהראי, על הרמב"ם שם, on the Rambam there. שכתב בדעת הרמב"ם, he writes in the words of the Rambam, דסביר עלי כתירוץ הבטרה של התוספות, that he follows the second opinion of Tosafot. What's the second opinion of Tosafot?
You asked about business.
They ask
Anyway.
in that order, but they judge in the other order. ועיין בבח, look in the writings of the Bach, Rabbi Yoel, Circus. שכתב, that he writes, להשיג על בית יוסף, to argue against the בית יוסף. וכתב, and he writes, שהוא טעות סופר בטור. That which the Tur put the list out of order, that's a mistake in the Tur, it's a misprint. He didn't actually write that. ויקר כדברי התוספות, and the words of the Tosafot are correct. וכן הסכים בשערי כנסת הגדולה, in the book שערי כנסת הגדולה, he agrees, on page 2. ועיין במאירי. You guys remember the Meiri? When did we just have it?
Yeah.
French.
Very good, the French.
We talked about with the churches.
He was the one who had that more open stance on Christianity. Remember that?
Yeah.
So this is the same Meiri. Chikatav, he writes. See, isn't that great that you hear the Meiri and now you know which, because you already studied something else from him that was significant. And so now you put it in your bag of the Meiri, these are the things that he says. He writes, Leolam Adam, a person should always be zariz. Is a word for it? Zariz?
Alacritus.
Alacritus, that's the word.
What?
It means a person should always hurry l'limud Torah, to the study of Torah. Should always be running to go there. Mipnei shekol chayav tluim ba, because his whole life depends on it. Derech ha'ara amru ein tchilat dino shel adam ela divrei Torah. Like they say that the first thing they judge a person about is the study of Torah. ומבואר יוצא שמפרש מה שאמרו שחילתו של דברי תורה אינו על הדין בשמיים אחר מותו של אדם, אלא על עצם חיי האדם בעולם הזה שחייו תלויים בעסק התורה. Interesting. The Meiri says here a person should run to study words of Torah because in Shamayim they judge us based on our level of Torah study, how much Torah we study. He says, so you see that the Meiri understands this whole concept of judging us first about while we're still alive in this world. Your whole life is dependent on it. Meaning, a person could literally lose their life, God forbid, based on the amount of Torah they study. In which case, he says, according to this opinion, lo kashe midi mima shamu b'Shabbat. It's not so difficult anymore. I mean, the question is now answered in a different way. There's two answers of Tosafot, one answer of the two, and the fourth answer now of the Meiri. The Meiri is saying, no, this has nothing to do with the next world. This is judging a person in this world. The questions about business and Torah, that happens in the next world. But don't get confused, there's no contradiction here. The Hata Meiri Linyan Din Shamayim. Achar moto shel adam, because that has to do with judging a person in Shamayim after a person passes. Here's one last answer to this contradiction about what comes first, business or Torah study. And this will make Baruch very happy because this is his answer. He must have lived a few hundred years ago and wrote this in a book.
Oh.
V'ayen b'chidushei ha-Maharit. Look at the writings of the Maharit on Kiddushin. Shevi b'shem Ridbaz. He brings down the name of the Ridbaz. Shepiresh, that he explains. Ma she'amru, that which they say, nasata v'natata be'emunah. Did you give and take honestly? Literally, it doesn't say business. It says, did you give and take? Because in business, you give and take. Dehainu al divrei Torah. That's referring to the words of Torah. One question is, when you study Torah, did you study it honestly? Did you try to reach the truth, or were you trying to fulfill your own agenda? And the second question is, did you establish set times for this kind of Torah study? I mean, there are two questions about Torah study. There are different questions. And that's the answer. There's no contradiction. Also, the first question is talking about Torah study. And I'll explain. In Hebrew, we can say the word masa'u matan, give and take, refers to business. But you can also say, for example, on my smicha certificate, my first one that I got, it says in there that I went to Rabbi Katzin, V'nasati v'natati imo b'divrei Torah, that I give and took with him in Torah. I had a conversation back and forth in the Torah. And he answered yes to what should be answered yes, and no to what should be answered no. This concept of give and take is not just about business. It's in any place where you have this kind of exchange back and forth. And so the Maharit brings down the Ridbaz, who explains this whole thing is not even a contradiction, because both the Mishnah that says that person is judged in the beginning of about Torah, and then the one says, well, is judged about his give and take, and then he's judged about his Torah. Both of them are talking about Torah. It's not one's talking about business and one is talking about Torah. Now, even though that might not be the way most authorities answer it, that definitely qualifies for a fifth answer. And that was why I didn't tell Baruch anything at the beginning. Because you get the nachat of, we should say at this point, we say Baruch Shekivanti. Thank you, Hashem, for letting me align my mind with someone greater than me. So we have 5 answers. The first answer of the Tosafot was, what's the difference between the two teachings of the Talmud? The first one was talking about a person who
sets aside time and then he
studies Torah, even though he doesn't necessarily set aside time to study Torah. And the second is about a person who doesn't study Torah at all. So they judge him based on what he's worse at. So the Torah guy, they're going to talk to him about his business, and the one who doesn't study Torah, they're going to talk to him about studying Torah. The answer of the Tur, the way the Beit Yosef explains the Tur, is answer number 3. That is
honest in business first and then
Torah. The Torah said
Torah.
Torah.
he switches around the order.
Yeah.
Why? He says the order is, that piece of Talmud wasn't telling you the order, we're just telling you the questions. So the questions we have now, and we're going on the order of the other Mishnah. So everything is out of order, and it's okay, it all makes sense, not a contradiction. The fourth answer we gave is that one of the teachings was talking about
Studying honestly.
this world,
Oh, yeah.
and the other one is talking about the next world. So maybe they don't contradict because it's talking about 2 different realities. And the last answer that we gave,
was, did you honestly set time aside?
did you honestly have time to study? Meaning, both questions have to do with studying of Torah, and therefore there's no contradiction between both teachings of our rabbis. What we just did now is called in Aramaic shakla v'tarya, or in yeshiva they'd say shakla v'tarya. Shakla v'tarya means to give and take, a back and forth. And very often what they'll do is they'll take a student and say, okay, I don't need you to answer all the questions about that page of Talmud, but tell me that page of Talmud from beginning to end, all the questions and the answers. Give me the back and forth. What did this rabbi say, and what did that rabbi answer? What did the next rabbi say? What did the next one answer? How did Rashi explain? How did Tosfot answer? And you give a shakla v'tarya about the page, and they assume that if you could do that, then you must know what you were talking about. It's not just memorizing and writing down facts; it's being able to follow the conversation the whole way through. You would be surprised at the amount of people in the world who cannot follow a conversation. They cannot follow an argument from point A to point B to point C and then end up in D. They can't.
Just try calling customer service at your cable company.
You'll know all
you'll know
about
all
it.
about it.
They can't follow anything.
Is this technically what you call pilpul then?
That is not pilpul. That is actually as much shot as you can get. That is, you must understand what happened on this page before you begin to delve into the pilpul of, so why did that rabbi say this? Before you tell me why the rabbi said what, first know what they said is what. And so speaking things out loud afterwards, Chazal review, it's very important to be able to go back. Sometimes in Yeshiva, in Baltimore, we didn't have this luxury. And in Yerushalayim, so we'd finish a class for our parents, and it was one of those days. You couldn't sit in your chair for too long, or it was too hot inside, or whatever. You weren't in the mood, you were tired. So you get up and go for a walk in the old city with your study partners. How do you study when you walk? You do this. You say, okay, the rabbi gave a shiur, so let's do from the beginning to the end. Can we repeat the back and forth of the shiur? Can we repeat yesterday's Shulchan Aruch, the back and forth of all the commentaries? And that's what you do while you walk. You do as best as you can. And you review that way. You could do it when you drive also. You drive home from Kollel. What's the 5 answers of... And if you don't remember, if I remember just 3, so when you get home, you park your car, you pull out your book, and I remember the other 2, and you just successfully did Chazal. Everyone should have a beautiful evening.